Welcome back into the Arrowhead Pride Rapid Reaction Show. I am Stephen Serda, joined as always by my guy, Rocky Magana. Preseason, week one in the books. It was a losing effort, Rocky, but it's the preseason. So there's plenty of things that we saw in this game that we should be plenty optimistic about when it comes to the Kansas City Chiefs and everything that we saw here in preseason week one. But Rocky, it's been a long off season. I've talked to you a ton about this team, and we're all really excited about all the young players, all the roster turnover this off season. How'd you feel? First game action that we saw, and I was pretty impressed with some of the youngsters on this team.
I tell you what, I was impressed with some of the youngsters. Obviously, the same thing we encountered with the offensive line last year, going with the youth movement and kind of the overhaul, is that early in preseason, even early in the regular season, you're going to take your lumps. There's going to be some rough patches. I think we saw those rough patches a few different times today. Karlaftis got off to a slow start. I know we'll kind of hit on that later. Williams had a little bit troubling coverage, but for the most part, you saw some of the young guys flash also. Death Row Chanel looked really good when he was coming downhill, and so it's good to be back. It's good to get the rust off, and it's good just, to be here and chopping it up with you, man. It's going to be a big season. And, we say it was a losing effort, but anytime you get out of Soldier Field mostly healthy, it's a win.
Yeah, and it's the preseason. It's the first preseason game of the year, and yeah, it's losing doesn't matter. All we care about is that we got to see the guys take the field, and we got to see the Chiefs in action. So I want to start things off with the veterans and really the first team offense that was obviously led by Patrick Mahomes, and they looked good, Rocky. They looked really good. Mahomes goes 6 of 7 in his first and only drive of the game. Throws a touchdown pass to Blake Bell, and it was really that they moved the ball with ease, and they were good. Like Mahomes looked. I was joking around on Twitter during that drive. Just man, Mahomes is just out there having fun. Like he is just excited to be back out on the football field. And, all the question marks that we have about this offense, about the pass catchers, about the running back game. And I think it was just good for Chiefs fans to get that first look and for them to make it look easy with the first team offense.
Yeah, I mean, Mahomes is at that stage in his career at this point where if he wanted to do it to pull a Tom Brady and take 3 weeks off and then just show up to the regular season, I don't think he'd really miss a beat. He walked out there and he looked like he could have stepped into a playoff game tomorrow and led the Chiefs. There was no rust on him. He was sharp as can be. The first team offense, I mean, when Andy Reid had all of his weapons and he was actually trying in the beginning of the first half, he outcoached Matt Eberflus up and down the field, offensively and defensively both. There was no question today that the Chiefs ones were far superior athletically and just talent-wise than the Bears ones. I mean, it was night and day difference.
Yeah, and it is the Chicago Bears. We got to be honest about that. I think the Bears have a good opportunity to be the worst team in the NFL this season, and that hurts me to say because I'm a Justin Fields fan and I want to see Justin Fields be a good NFL quarterback. But the roster is just not very talented. But you take the wins where you can get them. And actually, I do want to check out that Patrick Mahomes touchdown pass to Blake Bell on the first series of the game.
Mahomes off the fake, dumps it down, and it's a walk-in for the tight end, Blake Bell. A touch for Kansas City, the Belldozer.
I mean, that's all you can ask for, right, Rocky? That's all you can ask for on the first series of the game. And everybody was freaking out. And I said on Friday on Show and BK, the idea that Patrick Mahomes was actually going to play the entire first quarter of preseason game number 1 was ridiculous. I was like, he's got 2 series. If they score a touchdown on the first series, he is not coming back into the game. And that's exactly what happened. So yeah, you just have to love how easy he made it look and the fact that he was able to cap it off with the touchdown on the opening drive.
Yeah, when I said earlier that, Andy Reid outcoached Matt Eberflus, that was it right there. one of Matt Eberflus's tendencies is that in short yardage situations, he likes to kind of bring the heat and kind of come at the quarterback. And the Chiefs just 100% knew that was coming, and Mahomes used it to his advantage and just did a little slip inside pass to the tight end, which we've seen him do 1,000 times. It was textbook Chiefs offense up and down the field, and I mean it was just a beautiful thing to watch. It gets you excited because after all the turnover we've had on the offensive side of the ball this year, yet one thing I came out of here thinking one thing is for sure. The Chiefs offense is still the Chiefs offense as long as Patrick Mahomes is your quarterback and Andy Reid is your head coach. I don't care who the heck is playing at the rest of the skill positions. The Chiefs offense is going to be dangerous.
And we mentioned the touchdown pass to Blake Bell. I do need to mention that Bell did leave this game early with a hip injury. It appeared to be a non-contact injury when he went down, and he was carted to the locker room where the Chiefs pretty quickly ruled him out for the rest of the contest. Do hope that Blake Bell is okay and that it's nothing serious that's going to cause him to miss a lot of time, because we're still waiting for Jody Fortson to be totally healthy, and he was not active today, but I was not surprised by that because he missed so much practice time with that quad injury, and he did return to practice this week, but it was kind of on a limited basis. The Chiefs are working him back in slowly. If Blake Bell is out for a significant period of time, you got Travis Kelce, you got Jody Fortson, who I think when healthy is locked in is your number 2 tight end. And now we're down to second-year tight end Noah Gray, who had a couple impact plays in this game. I think he had 1 reception, but he's looked good in training camp, and he's had his moments in training camp. So if Blake Bell is going to wind up missing a significant amount of time due to this injury, we might see quite a bit of Noah Gray moving forward, at least here in the preseason and moving into the regular season.
Yeah, and I think that Noah Gray was going to make the team regardless. I think Andy likes Blake Bell a lot, but I think when push comes to shove, he was going to go Gray over Bell if he had to. I think more than anything, this is going to make them want to play Gray a little bit more than they wanted to. I think they like Gray a lot, and they also don't want to risk him getting injured. With Fortson, because the Chiefs tight ends look like a strength, but then all of a sudden, you have Fortson, nursing a nagging injury, and now you have Bell, so now you're really down to Kelce, Gray, and Franks, and you're not going to play Kelce, but a series of games, and so you almost need to bring in another camp body, if Bell's going to be out for the rest of preseason.
Yeah, all of a sudden, I'm like, are they thin at tight end? Do they need another guy there? Because now I am a little bit worried. It's the flashes we were seeing from Jody Fortson early in training camp. If he's healthy and he can get back on the field, I think Jody Fortson's going to have a significant role this season. And I think he's got the athleticism. We got a tiny glimpse of what his red zone presence could be last season. And I think he could be a legitimate weapon for them that way. We know that Travis Kelce is going to have a bunch of targets, and he's going to have a good chance at going over 1,000 yards again because he's Travis Kelce. But I think Jody Fortson could have a significant role if he is healthy. But all of a sudden you're like, oh, that tight end room might be a little thin. So they might need to look at bringing in another camp body, or if there's another veteran out there that they might be interested in, if this Blake Bell injury is serious. But it does mean big things probably, and more playing time for Noah Gray moving forward. I want to stick with the veterans, with the first team for a second. And I'm talking about Chris Jones, really. Chris Jones looked fantastic. And, we've been talking a ton about the pass rush and the defensive ends, and they brought in Carlos Dunlap because you're a little skeptical about it being Frank Clark and Mike Dana who started this game, or Frank Clark, George Karlaftis. They needed the depth, so they bring in the veteran Carlos Dunlap, who I think is going to be a really good player for them. But man, I know it's the Chicago Bears, and I know their offensive line is terrible, but Chris Jones was a monster in the few snaps that he played, and he got that sack that you could see the picture of up on the screen on Justin Fields, where he just looked like he was dominating everybody on the offensive line, and there was nobody who was going to stop Chris Jones.
So 100% agree with you. Chris Jones was a dominating force. I mean, he didn't play very much today, but the snaps that he was in there, he was a consistent difference maker, and just the entire interior of the Bears offensive line was consistently collapsing and flushing Justin Fields outside of the pocket. I think that Chris Jones looks a little bit thicker this year than he did last year when he was trying to kind of split his time between edge and defensive tackle. I think now that he's able to just focus on his natural position, which is defensive tackle. He's able to just, get his body right and just put his ears back and just push the interior offensive lineman back into the quarterback and just destroy their lives. I, for one, am super excited for Chris Jones this year. If he looks anything like this going into the regular season, caveat, it is against the Chicago Bears, but he looks like he could have as good a year as he's ever had in his entire career. This could be a career year for him if he consistently looks like this.
Yeah, they don't need to play games with putting him on the edge this season. We know that he is dominant from the interior, and that's all you wanted to see in a game where you knew Chris Jones was only going to play a handful of snaps. And honestly, I was kind of surprised that they played him at all in this contest. For him to go out there and look dominating in just a handful of snaps and then leave the game, and we're like, okay, that's all we needed to see from Chris Jones. Like, that's all you can ask for in a preseason game, especially the first preseason contest of the season, even if it is against the Chicago Bears. We got to take a look at the rookies, Rocky, because I know those are the players that everybody is paying attention to. That is the group of guys that everybody has been locked into all training camp. And of course, we got to start with Isaiah Pacheco. Rocky, I was, I think shocked. I was pretty shocked when Isaiah Pacheco came in immediately spelling Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Like, we knew Clyde is going to be the starting running back this season, but Pacheco's been getting all the camp hype. He's got all the athleticism in the world. He's their starting kick returner. He's got the 4.37 speed, and he's got size and explosiveness. He's shown an ability to pass block and catch passes. Like, he looks like he could be an every down running back in the NFL if the hype lives up to everywhere that it's been so far in training camp. And I still kind of thought that Jerick McKinnon was going to be the third down back, that he was going to be that guy, and Pacheco was going to have to find his way of contributing early on as the Chiefs starting kick returner, and then maybe make some plays there and be sprinkled into the offense here where he'd show that explosiveness, that athleticism until, once we get farther into the season, Andy Reid would be like, okay, we just got to get this guy on the field more. Like, we just got to get him more opportunities. And that wasn't the case in preseason game number 1. He immediately came in as Clyde's backup, as the number 2 running back, caught a pass, shed a tackle, showed that contact balance that all of us have been waiting to see. And, he didn't, it's not like he broke off a 70-yard touchdown run or something like that, but he did everything that you wanted to see from him, right? Like, coming in that early, being the clear number 2 running back, which I was really surprised by, catching that pass, shedding the tackle, even though he didn't find the end zone. Like, I saw everything that I needed to see from Isaiah Pacheco in this game. And apparently I wasn't even being high enough on him, because it appears he is their clear-cut number 2 running back as we move forward towards the regular season.
Listen, since we drafted him, I did the film breakdown for him when we drafted him over at arrowheadpride.com. And I've been all over this guy. I love this guy. I've been on Twitter all week saying Merry Pockmas, because this preseason to me is all about Isaiah Pacheco and him making a name for himself. And I think that you learned, more importantly, by his lack of usage in the game and coming out so early of what they think of him, that Andy Reid trusts him, that he doesn't need the reps, that he's seen enough out of Isaiah Pacheco to know that he can trust him in a game situation, and then B, that they don't want to risk getting him injured, And so I think that this says more about Isaiah Pacheco positively as a player in the eyes of Reid and the coaching staff than it does about Jerick McKinnon. I think Jerick McKinnon is still Jerick McKinnon. He's a fine back, but I think that, Pacheco has an element of strength, speed, explosiveness that McKinnon and other running backs on the roster just don't have. The man is a freak athlete.
For the fantasy football players out there, the fact that Isaiah Pacheco got into this game with the first team offense and then didn't play that much afterwards, you mentioned it, Rocky, like didn't get that many snaps, means that the Chiefs are planning on, like, this guy's going to be a big part of our offense. This guy is going to get a massive opportunity this season. So the hype is there, the excitement's there now, and we're actually seeing it unfold for the Kansas City Chiefs that, like, no, they truly do view him as a contributing playmaker and a starting caliber playmaker for this offense, which is awesome to see. It's exciting. I'm really glad that I had a dynasty fantasy draft before training camp started. So I was able to get Isaiah Pacheco late in that draft before all the hype took off. But I understand why Kansas City Chiefs fans are excited, and I think they should be, because just in the small sample size that we got today in Chicago, you saw enough of the glimpses to where you're like, man, that guy's got an opportunity to be really, really exciting this season.
Listen, I tweeted out before the game that you're about to, all your fantasy leagues, you're about to see that little, like that risers and fallers list that they have in every fantasy football league, that Isaiah Pacheco is getting ready to be on every single risers list after this game. And maybe he won't be because the lack of opportunities. But if you're out there, Chiefs fans, and he's still available in your leagues, I'd pick him up, because he's not going to be the starter, but he's going to get meaningful touches. And the Chiefs offense is going to score points, and he's going to score touchdowns.
Yeah. At the very least, he is the handcuff to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and he went from being a late round flyer to now he is a must-own fantasy player in every single league that you are in.
In fairness, a handcuff for Clyde Edwards-Helaire is probably going to start 4 games during the season.
Yeah, it feels like based on Clyde's track record, you can really bank on that. We got to talk about the other offensive rookie and wide receiver, Skye Moore, who I think also was really impressive in his first game action. We've seen the clips of training camp where they're using Skye Moore out of the backfield. He did get a jet sweep opportunity in this game. He wasn't able to do much with it, but the fact that you're even getting those looks in the preseason should make you really excited, because Andy Reid's not showing anything personnel wise in these games. He's not giving away any of his offensive schemes and the creative play calling that we know he is famous for. But the fact that they were willing to bust that out in a preseason game means they've got some things dialed up for Skye Moore. And I think you should be really excited for him too. He did have a really tough contested catch, and we saw the hands. We saw, he's not the biggest wide receiver in the world, but he's strong and he can battle for the football and he can break tackles. I think that Chiefs fans should be really happy with what we saw from Skye Moore today as well.
Oh, 100%. I think, the sky is the limit for Skye Moore, pun intended. But I think that the thing that you noticed today is that a lot of the touches that usually would go Mekol's way, as far as like some manufactured touches, went Skye Moore's way. And then on top of that, Skye Moore also caught the tough balls across the middle. I think that Skye Moore is trouble for Mecole Hardman as far as snap count and being a consistent, contributor on the Chiefs offense. I think it's good for the Chiefs offense. Maybe not great for Mecole Hardman. Mecole Hardman's still a weapon. He's still going to be a part of this offense. But I think that you're going to see, as the season goes on, Skye Moore's role is going to increase and Mecole Hardman's is going to go down, because he does all the things Mecole does, but better.
Yeah, there was a small moment this offseason where I was talking myself into Mecole Hardman, possibly being the Chiefs' top wide receiver. It's not going to happen. It's not the case now. I feel like it's safe to say that. And, he didn't play very many snaps today, but and Skye Moore notably played more than Mecole Hardman, because as of right now, he probably is below Mecole Hardman on the depth chart. But a lot of it is just getting these young guys reps and getting them game speed action and getting them contact action. And so that doesn't really mean that much to me when it comes to Skye Moore. I think that we saw a glimpse of his talent and what he can be for this offense. The guy that I was really paying attention to going into this game was Chiefs rookie safety Brian Cook. I mentioned it on Show and BK earlier this week. I feel like Brian Cook, in terms of the Chiefs group of rookies, has been a little overlooked just because, he's going to be the third safety, mixing in with Justin Reid and Juan Thornhill. Like, those are your clear-cut starters. But we've seen the Chiefs utilize 3 safety looks in the past. It's kind of a staple of Spags defense at this point. So Brian Cook is going to have an opportunity to step in. And I feel like we've downplayed his training camp a little bit just because there's so many other young players that we're infatuated with right now. And I think Brian Cook's got an opportunity to be a really good player. I wanted to see that big, hard-hitting safety, and he did give us a glimpse of that on special teams. And I think he could have a big role on special teams moving forward this season too. I think there's a lot of optimism and a lot of reasons to be excited about Brian Cook. And I feel like I'm just saying that about every single Chiefs rookie on this show, but it's because we saw flashes from everybody, Rocky. Like we saw flashes from basically the entire group throughout the entire contest.
Chiefs love three safeties. Chiefs came out with playing three safeties in the very first drive. And they had Justin Reid up on the line also, and they kind of had Juan Thornhill in the back. But I think that this year you're going to see a lot of Reid, Cook, and Thornhill all on the field at the same time, with Cook and Reid creeping towards the line of scrimmage where they can go downhill and make plays, and then Thornhill kind of manning the back. And that should be exciting to you, Chiefs fans, because when he's able to seek out contact, Brian Cook is very effective in disrupting the other team's offense. And like you said, it was his very first professional game today, and it was the very first, snaps that he got, and we saw a glimpse of it today. I would only expect as the season moves forward that kind of increases as his snap count increases, and as his experience increases, that it's just going to get a little bit more and more exciting to watch. So,
yeah, Brian Cook is, for Chiefs fans, I think he's gonna. We talked about this a little bit on Show MBK as well, that he's going to be able to step into kind of that Dan Sorensen role, where Dan Sorensen's been a straight up liability for the last couple of seasons for the Chiefs. Brian Cook can do all of that stuff better. Like the things that they were trying to utilize Dan Sorensen as, kind of a linebacker supplement and replacement. Like, we need you around the line of scrimmage to help against the run and try to tackle like that. Brian Cook can excel in that role, and he could have a huge impact there.
Dan Sorensen wishes he was Brian Cook. Brian Cook's going to excel in the Brian Cook role that Dan Sorensen's been trying to play for the last decade unsuccessfully, with the exception of a couple of highlight plays. But that's Brian Cook's role, and that is no longer the Dan Sorensen role. That's the Brian Cook role. Dan Sorensen can just do his own thing down there in the Big Easy.
I feel like you're just being a Dan hater. I mean, Dan gave the Chiefs some good years. All right. He was bad the last couple of seasons, but Dan's given the Chiefs some quality reps at some points early in his career. We got to talk about George Karlaftis, Chiefs rookie first round pick. Early on when he first got into the game, it looked like it took him a little bit to get going. But then once he did, going against the Bears' second team offensive line, Karlaftis was a menace. He was playing really good. He was being disruptive. We saw that kind of power rush, and he actually did wind up sacking Bears' backup quarterback Trevor Siemian. So we've actually got that for you guys available right here.
Shifting, trying to maneuver, and he gets brought down by the rookie out of Purdue, George Karlaftis, the number 30 pick, who was one of the absolutely best edge rushers in college football last year.
Again, it's preseason, and I don't want to just dive headfirst into all of the rookie hype, but the snaps that we saw from George Karlaftis and, going against the Bears second team unit, and I've already mentioned that I think the Bears are going to be the worst team in the NFL, and I think they're going to be legitimately in play for the number 1 overall pick in the draft next season. But you just want to see him win reps against NFL caliber players. And once he got going, it took him a few snaps to get going. But once he did, George Karlaftis looked like a menace.
He did. And I think that interior rip move is kind of his staple a little bit, the one that he used to get that sack. But I think besides that, he was really making the quarterback uncomfortable for the majority of the day that he was in the game. I'd say it took him a couple of drives to get going, to kind of, get used to the speed of the NFL. There was a couple of mental lapses early on where he pursued inside and the play was bounced outside, but those are all things that's going to happen when you're a rookie. It's your first NFL game. It's your first NFL reps. I think that he's a quick study, and he adapted very quickly and learned from it. And he was noticeable. He was noticeable, and he's the real deal, I think. I mean, like you said, it's the first game, it's the preseason, but I think he showed you enough that you can be hopeful about what it's got, coming down the pipe in the future.
And last thing on the rookies, I want to mention cornerback Joshua Williams, and I want to mention cornerback Jalen Watson. Joshua Williams, I think is going to wind up being a big a playmaker in the secondary. I think he's going to wind up having a large role, and I think he's going to be a future starting cornerback for the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't think he's going to be that at the start of the regular season, but somewhere down the line this season, I think he's got a good chance at being a starter. I think at the very least next season, you're looking at Joshua Williams potentially being a starter for your secondary. And Jalen Watson has been getting some work with the ones in training camp, and he's been getting some opportunity. Joshua Williams did get burned for that big play by Tajay Sharp. It was a nice throw. He mistimed the ball. I don't think he was in a bad position. I just think that he was a rookie who mistimed the football, and then it was an incredible catch by Tajay Sharp. So I think that's something that you're going to expect from a player as young as him, who's still trying to learn and grow at the position.
Yeah, it's a learning experience for Joshua Williams on that play. He was initially a really good position. I mean, he had great coverage, and then he just kind of like drifted a little bit and then just tried to extend his arm out and make the play. It's almost like he was in such good position early on that he got lazy at the top of the play and then just whiffed, right? And so that's something that he's going to have to learn, that you got to play the ball all the way through the end of the play. Just because you're there doesn't mean that you're going to break it up in the NFL.
And circling back to rookie cornerback Jalen Watson, who we know that Isaiah Pacheco has been getting all the 7th round rookie hype, but Jalen Watson, as I already mentioned, has been getting opportunities with the ones, and he's not going to be a starter or anything when the season comes, but he is got a chance at being a rotational player for this secondary. Like, the Chiefs are giving him some looks and they like him. And I liked what I saw from him today. And I know Pacheco's getting all the hype, but I think Chiefs fans should be paying a little bit more attention to Jalen Watson. Like, you don't see 7th round cornerbacks get a lot of these kinds of opportunities very often. And that says something about what they're seeing from him in camp and the way that he's been playing and practicing with the team.
Yeah, Jalen Watson, I mean, he's fast, man. He is such a fast player. And he was great in coverage today. I mean, he really, really shined, in pass coverage. I think the area of that he needs to work on is in run support. He's just, at this point in his career, I don't know if he's quite strong enough to hold up in the run game. He kind of gets moved back and pushed back by blockers a little bit too much. He can't really shed the block to get back downfield and make a play. But that's something he's going to have to learn, and he's going to work on his strength as he gets older. He's a rookie, 7th round draft pick. I think for what he is right now, he's a guy that you can bring in a dime package, and he can lock down a slot receiver, though, for sure.
Moving on to the other Watson, Justin Watson, Pete Sweeney's guy. Pete Sweeney has been hyping up wide receiver Justin Watson all training camp, talking about the chemistry that he has shown with Patrick Mahomes and the playmaking ability. It's safe to say that Justin Watson is a lock to make this team, I think, after his performance today against the Chicago Bears. He played a ton with the twos, wound up having 5 grabs, 45 yards, and that touchdown, which we actually have available for you guys. So let's check out Justin Watson's touchdown.
For the end zone, it is Watson hauling it in for the touchdown. Nice throw by Bouchel and a good catch by Watson for a 22-yard score.
So Justin Watson is the Chiefs' 5th wide receiver, right? I do think that he is a lock to make this team. At this point, we know that he's a burner. We know that he can win deep down the field, and he's gotten rave reviews from the coaches, and Patrick Mahomes obviously likes him. This is for a guy that's getting training camp hype, for a guy that's fighting for a spot in a deep and veteran little wide receiver group. That's exactly the kind of performance you need to see from him in the preseason to make sure that he locks down a roster spot.
Yeah, he's big, he's strong, he's fast, he does the little things right, and he played mistake-free football today. He made the most of his opportunities. Yeah, I agree with you. Pete's been hyping this guy, and I've been saying Pete's right. As much as possible, that Justin Watson was going to make this team the moment that Mahomes called up Brett Veach and said, hey, how fast is this guy? When he was working out with him down in Texas in the offseason. Justin Watson is just a guy that he looks like he's a solid option. Like, he's not that guy that's going to be, a wide receiver 1. But he can be, like you said, that wide receiver 5 that you bring in occasionally that can win on the outside as the X receiver. So I think that I put it in Sharpie, man. Justin Watson's on this team.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's safe to say he is locked to make this roster. I don't think it's safe to say that running back Ronald Jones is going to make this team, however. And we've been talking about it. He's been running with the threes a lot in training camp over the past couple of weeks. And, at the start of camp, he was getting looks as the number 2 running back. He was running with the first team and the second team and getting opportunities there as an early down rusher, because we know he's not a pass catcher. Like the guy's just got cinder blocks for hands. We've seen that so far in his NFL career. But as Pacheco has emerged, as Jerick McKinnon, we know what we're getting in him as a veteran running back and his pass catching ability and his reliability there as a player. I was struggling as long as 2 weeks ago to see where Ronald Jones fits into this running back room. And now I think it's safe to say that he's not on the roster bubble. He's just simply not making this team. He is not going to make the Chiefs' final roster.
No, he's not going to make the final roster at all, I don't think. I think that he's this year's Carlos Hyde for multiple reasons. He's honestly not a good fit for the team. Like you said, Chiefs are a pass-first offense, and he can't catch the ball. He has a history of ball security issues and fumbles. And then you saw him today. He's a turnstile in pass protection. He cannot pass block for the life of him, or does he seem like he really wants to? Like his effort in pass blocking was non-existent today. And he's a guy who's been a lead back in an offense previously in his career, who's still, quote unquote, in the prime of his career. So I don't think he's going to want to be sitting on a roster at running back 3 or running back 4, just happy to make the team. He wants an opportunity to get reps. He wants an opportunity to play. And so you don't want a guy in the locker room who doesn't want to be there. The Chiefs have shown that time and time again, that if you don't want to be here, they'll let you move yourself out the door. And I'm not saying that he's had a bad attitude or anything like that. I have no proof of that. But I'm saying as it gets towards the end of the preseason and it's looking like he's going to be running back 3, I think he's going to say, I'd like to have an opportunity to play somewhere else.
Yeah, and that seems pretty clear to me. I know a lot of people have been floating around, he's Carlos Hyde, like the Chiefs traded Carlos Hyde right before the season started a couple of years ago. And then I think he wind up having 1,000 yards for the Houston Texans that season. So Ronald Jones is that kind of candidate. Like he has shown that he can be an effective early down rusher in the NFL. But yeah, so far in his NFL career, he's a liability in pass blocking. He can't catch passes, and he's just not reliable in every facet of the game the way you need a starting running back, especially one that's going to be in the backfield with Patrick Mahomes to be. So I think it's safe to say that Ronald Jones is just simply not going to make this team this season. And I do want to mention, though, that running back Derek Gore did wind up leaving this game with a neck injury. We have not gotten an update on him just yet. So we'll be on the lookout for that here at the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network and arrowheadpride.com. Hope that Derek Gore is okay. I know that he's a player that Andy Reid likes a lot. He got a decent amount of playing time for the Chiefs last season. And if it is a significant injury for Gore and then, Ronald Jones winds up being on his way out of town, I do think that they could look at trying to bring in another running back, because I do think that you want 4 running backs on the roster. If you only carry 3 running backs headed into the regular season, you feel like that position group's a little thin, especially at that particular position where guys can get injured a lot because of all the contact that they take.
Where's Darwin right now? Just bring Darwin back. Throw him on there. Or Jerry O'Neal. You honestly already have that 4th running back on the roster, and you're calling him a wide receiver / running back at the moment. Like Jerry O'Neal could be that 4th running back if Gore can't go, and they move on from Ronald Jones. They could keep him as that Darwin Tompkins, Dexter McCluster, type of guy that they've shown that to like in the past. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
So last thing for me, Rocky, on preseason game number 1, again, the Chiefs lose to the Chicago Bears 19-14, but first string offense looked fantastic in the one drive that they had. And there was a ton of promise throughout the entire game, but I think the most lighthearted and probably most fun moment of the game was when Andy Reid and Dave Toub decided to deploy safety Justin Reid on an extra point attempt, and Reid nailed it to his credit. We've been joking around because we saw him kicking field goals in practice, and then Dave Toub actually intentionally put Justin Reid in without telling him ahead of time in practice. Like, in a long, like, end of game field goal simulated situation, and Justin Reid apparently shanked the kick, which that we had fun talking about that this week. But he nails the PAT, and Justin Reid was so happy about it on the sideline. It was just a cool moment and lighthearted preseason moment where it's like, you could tell why these guys like playing for Andy Reid, because Andy Reid is willing to do something like that. He's not taking it too seriously, and he knew how fun it would be for his team to watch Justin Reid make that extra point attempt.
I mean, I think Justin Tucker held the record as the highest paid kicker in the NFL for all of like half a week. Justin Reid, I think, is making more than Justin Tucker. So I think Justin Reid's the highest paid kicker in the NFL right now. I think he should just take that Reid off the back of his jersey and replace it with Tucker. I mean, we found our backup kicker here. If something happens to Harrison, I mean, you don't got to go out there and search the world for the Robbie Goulds, who are just kind of, the journeyman kicker anymore. Just throw Justin Reid out there and let him kick for a couple of weeks until Harrison Butker comes back. Because I mean, he looked as good to me as anybody else you're going to see. That was a beautiful point after attempt.
I'm fine with Justin Reid being the emergency kicker. We're not going to see Justin Reid attempt any extra points in the regular season. But it was just a cool moment, and you could see how excited everybody was for him on the sidelines. It's just another one of those cool things where you see how much fun these guys are having being Kansas City Chiefs. And Justin Reid, I think, has been really underestimated so far in his career, like how good he's been just because of the bad teams that he's played for. So I think he is very excited to be here in Kansas City, and to see how happy he was after hitting that extra point was just something that was really cool in the middle of this game. But thank you guys. First one in the books. I'm a little rusty, but I feel like we did okay, Rocky. I feel like we had a pretty good show here for the Kansas City Chiefs fans. This being the first Arrowhead Pride Rapid Reaction show of the season. Me and Rocky will be here with you all season long. And Kramer Sandstone's behind the glass. He will be with us all throughout the entire season too. So shout out to my guy Kramer for helping us out today. You can follow Rocky on Twitter at Rocky Magana. You can follow Kramer at Kramer Talks. I'm Steven Serda. That's where you can find me. If you guys are listening to us on the podcast, make sure you stick around immediately following the show. We will have all of the post-game press conferences available for you in this show. So make sure you stick around after that. Otherwise, we got practice again in St. Joe on Monday, so we will talk to you guys for the next day of Chiefs training camp on Monday.